Okay, so I think we are live, and very good evening to all the lovely people over here. My name is Ashutosh Saxena, and I'll be the host for this meeting. And today we have a very special guest with us, and you've all heard the name in 28 minutes. Awesome Udemy courses, awesome content on YouTube, fantabulous concepts explained by Mr. Ranga, and we are delighted to welcome Mr. Ranga over here. Welcome, sir.
Glad to be here, yes, Ashutosh. Thanks a lot.
Yeah. So, how are you right now? How are you doing?
Pretty good. Watched a good
Awesome.
movie today. Feeling really
Awesome.
good.
This is so great. This is so great, and I just want to let the students know that Ranga is a DevOps veteran, and even the concepts of DevOps and cloud he will explain to you, and whatever the questions which we will ask, what is the core meaning of DevOps, why DevOps is so in trending right now, which resources to learn to kickstart the career in DevOps, or some related questions, and Ranga will answer all those questions today, right? So, Ranga, shall we start?
Sure.
Okay, this is so great. So, the very first question. Let's start the things from very scratch right now, right? So, the very first question, which clicks in everyone's mind, right? So, what is the core meaning of DevOps?
Right. Yeah, it's a funny thing, right? We in the IT industry, we like buzzwords, right? A lot of these buzzwords which we typically use in the IT industry, they don't have one definition, right? Microservices, serverless, DevOps. Ask anybody of what a definition of DevOps is. If you ask 10 people, you'll get 10 different definitions. And
Exactly.
that's how things are in our IT industry, right? What
Exactly.
I'm putting forward is my definition. I mean, the way I look at DevOps.
Mhm.
So if you look at the software industry, right, we have been building software for almost 5 decades, 5, 6 decades. It's very short time span. I mean, we don't really have a lot of experience building software. However, during this time period, there are a few things our industry as a whole recognized. One
Mhm.
is you want to get feedback as early as possible, right? Feedback is the most important thing. If I develop something, business wants to know whether the users will like it or not. You want to
Mhm.
get the user feedback as quickly as possible, right? If you go
Definitely.
long back, it was like the feedback cycle was like 1 year, right? For somebody to write a long requirement document to the time it goes to production, it was 1 year. And
Definitely.
these days, that kind of feedback time we don't really have. The second important thing which we realized was automation was very important. You want to
Exactly.
automate as many things as possible. Like students out there, I'm not sure how much experience they have with developing real life software, but you and me, having worked with real life projects, we know that writing code is just one part, right?
Exactly.
Starting from business analysis to deployment and monitoring and observing the application in production, there are so many
Definitely.
steps which are involved in software development and taking application live, right? You want to
Exactly.
automate as many aspects of this as possible. So, and the third aspect is you want the team to communicate really well, right? Jeff Bezos, your Amazon guru, right? He always says pizza team, right? So your
Exactly.
team should be like a pizza team, and it should have T-shaped skills. It should have all the typical skills that you would want, starting from business
Exactly.
analysis to taking it live. Every skill that you would need should be part of the team. Why? Because we would want to focus on communication. If people can talk to, like, the moment everybody is in a single team, they'll be able to talk to each other. The communication is really good. So these are the three elements I really focus on, right? Whenever we develop some software, communication is very important. Getting quick feedback is very important. Automation is very important. And for me, whether you talk about agile, whether you talk about DevOps, whether we call it SRE, whether we call it whatever term you want to call that, these are all steps in improving these three aspects of building software. So for me, DevOps is nothing but a step further in software development where we focus on these three elements and do a better job. And that's the reason why you would see, like, if you just do a Google for DevOps tools, you'd get list of 100 tools, because DevOps is related to everything in the software development life cycle. It's just
Exactly.
an improvement in how we do things.
Exactly. So this is the answer which you're given is just like a nail on the head, right? So I just want to elaborate this thing, right? That means the development is just a part. The operations and the management, everything is the tedious one, right? The development is the
Absolutely.
base plus the operations which you are doing. Let's say if you're given the example for the automation, let's say configuring the systems with the Ansible or configuring the infra using hashing of Terraform or the cloud formation or something. For the server templating, you're using Docker, orchestration, you're using Kubernetes. Operations is necessary, and everything is combined with this methodology, which is DevOps, and which is really heat in trending in the market. And the answer which you're given is completely perfect. And I hope the students who are watching this and whoever this are watching this right now got the clear concept in the mind that what is the core meaning of DevOps, right? So let's move to the next question. Let's say, what is the use and why DevOps is hot and why DevOps is important in the market right now?
Absolutely. So, see, we don't want to stay stagnant. As a software industry, we would want to keep moving forward. We want to keep improving how we build software. And for
Yeah,
me, DevOps is just the next step, right? It's just the next step in how we improve how we build software. And that's the most important part, right? Languages keep changing, frameworks keep changing, and how we build software keeps changing as well. I mean, we have to
exactly.
evolve with everything. Like, if you look at a few years back, the number of devices which were there were very, very less. But today, you have devices all around you. Today, I can do most of my things just by using my mobile, right? So technology is changing fast, and the industry, the way we develop software has to adapt. And that's why it's very, very important that we adopt modern methodology like DevOps. It helps you to release software faster in a more reliable way. So when I release software to production, I don't want to have bugs. And that's where
Definitely.
automation plays a key role. Like, it helps in identifying bugs early or even preventing them from happening at all. So improving our processes so that we take production applications live in a reliable way is very, very important. And that's where all the facets of DevOps are contributing.
Definitely. So this is another great answer given by Mr. Ranga over here, that the use of the core DevOps and whatever tools which are fit at their levels, right? So they are most important at their places. Everyone is playing a key role and a vital role, whatever the tool which you are using. So let's turn the road towards another direction. Most of the students think, what are the career opportunities, what are the job opportunities available in India or foreign or whatever. So if you can demonstrate what are the job opportunities available, let's consider India right now, how to approach the job opportunities and what tools, what techniques they need to learn to get a job as a DevOps engineer.
Right. So if you look at DevOps as a whole, right? So there are wide variety of tools that we can talk about.
Exactly.
So I mean, trying to list them would be a big task. Let's probably look at the high level important categories, right? You can talk about continuous integration, continuous deployment. Earlier, Jenkins was the most popular tool there. Today, I
Mhm.
would say some of the cloud tools are the most popular ones, like Azure DevOps, Cloud Build in Cloud Build in Google Cloud, AWS Code Pipelines in AWS. Those are some of the popular CI/CD tools. And now, like in the last couple of years, GitHub Actions also has become really, really popular, right? So you just have a GitHub repository, you can configure GitHub Actions to do CI/CD. So CI. CD also, there are a lot of elements which are getting really, really popular, right? So continuous deployment also, there are a lot of the same CI tools can be used, and also there are a new category of tools which are coming into continuous deployment as well. The
Yeah,
other parts are infrastructure as code, right? As far as infrastructure as code, probably the shirt you are wearing, Terraform, is the most popular infrastructure as code tool, right? So
definitely.
other than that, you have CloudFormation, you have Azure has its ARM templates, Google Cloud has its own way of deploying software as well, and the other option is Pulumi as well. So these are some of the parts when it comes to infrastructure as code. Other than that, like as part of infrastructure as code, there is something called configuration management. That's where
Yes,
Ansible and things like that like are the popular ones. Chef and Puppet are more like, I would say, old. I mean, maybe
yeah,
people are using them right now, but going forward with the like people going into cloud, I would say Ansible will have a big advantage over Chef and Puppet.
definitely.
And the observability side of things, right? There are tons of tools with respect to logging, tracing, metrics, and all that stuff. So yeah, this is the wide ambit of DevOps, right? Generally, when we talk about DevOps, we talk about continuous integration, continuous deployment, we talk about infrastructure as code, and observability. These are the four aspects that we typically touch upon, other than the communication kind of tools like Jira boards or whatever you have, right?
Yes,
That's the
exactly.
reason why it's very very difficult for somebody to say I'm an expert on DevOps, right? Because nobody can be an expert on all these things. Nobody can
Exactly.
be an expert from starting to ending. And that's the
Yes.
reason why whenever somebody is looking for a DevOps job, the first thing I would advise them to look at is what job profile they are looking at, right? So it's not, there is nothing called a DevOps job. There are specific parts of jobs where
Yes.
you focus on, right? In a,
Definitely.
probably there is a Terraform job, probably there is a continuous integration pipelines kind of setup job. So first of all, one of the most important things that learners need to focus on is the job profile they would want to apply for, because they need to know what is a specific job asking for. No job will ask for 100 different tools. A
Yeah.
job would ask for 3 or 4 related tools, and it's very very important to get like group them and do that. If somebody is not sure where to start with DevOps, I would think one of the best places to start is containers and container orchestration. Because if you go for container and container orchestration, all the things which we talked about, CI/CD, like IAC, observability, all of them become really really simple if we use containers and container orchestration. So if somebody is not sure where to start, I would ask them to start with either Docker and then build upon it and start with Kubernetes. I think those would be the two places where they can go and start learning. And that would be a good step forward if somebody is confused and they don't know where to start.
Yes, definitely. This is you explained really well things, and right. So there's no as such. Obviously, DevOps is endless. There is no starting. There's no ending. Right. So n number of tools are available, as you said. For server templating, we can use Docker. For the configuration management, we can use Ansible, and
Absolutely.
even Ansible is very powerful tool. Even I personally like it, Ansible. And for the orchestration, the very powerful thing which you can use is either Kubernetes or OpenShift available for the Red Hat. And this is completely endless thing. You can go for the monitoring like Prometheus, Grafana even, right?
Absolutely.
So definitely you can even I've seen many engineers which are categorized into the job. Like I am a let's say if a person is IAS engineer, they are using either CloudFormation or the Terraform, right? So
Absolutely.
that's the whole thing, which are categorized into different categories. And being become an expert in all of those right now, I don't think so it is possible for a human. We need to expertise in just one, and we need to
Exactly.
integrate with exactly with other available tools like Jenkins integration with the Docker, or we are just launching configuring the Docker configuration in a time in a, let's say, in a virtual machine using Ansible something. So you need to integrate the things, and you need to make a perfect a pipeline or something which is achieving some of the goal, right?
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
let's jump towards another question. Obviously we have discussed like n number of tools are available. Terraform is available, Jenkins is available, even if you don't want to configure your Kubernetes, let's say if you don't want to configure Kubernetes in your virtual machine, GK is available, EKS is available.
Absolutely.
So obviously, so how the person will start? So the another question turns up over here: from where to start?
Absolutely.
What are the best
Absolutely.
resources available to learn DevOps?
You're right. So I think like if you are the first thing that you need to decide is what you want to start. I mean, what is your goal, right? So what's the job profile you are aiming for, right? So that's the number one thing I would ask anybody. Don't just get into 100 different tools because there are 100 different tools out there. Learning them is very very complex, and that's not what you want as well. So first go and figure out what is the right job profile you are aiming for. Once you figure out what is the right job profile you are aiming for, then for that specific tool there is a lot of documentation available today. there are tons of resources available, right? So the official documentations of most of the tools is really, really good. If you want to learn Docker or Kubernetes, the official documentation will be a great place to start.
Yes. Yes.
Otherwise, the second thing I would recommend you to go and search is YouTube, right? If you just search for example, any of these tools, I can recommend my own videos, or there are a lot of other really good videos as well. So if you want to try our videos, you can just search for in 28 minutes Docker on YouTube, or in 28 minutes Kubernetes, in 28 minutes Terraform, in 28 minutes Ansible. Whichever thing you would search for on YouTube, you should be able to find a free video explaining that. And there are tons of courses also out there, right? So if you go to Udemy is just one of the marketplaces where there are courses. There are a lot of other platforms also offering similar kind of courses. So I also have a course on DevOps talking about 6 different tools. Like we have a course covering Docker, Kubernetes, Terraform, Azure DevOps, Ansible, and also Jenkins. So
Yes.
we do this in 3 different clouds: AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. So I mean, it's about figuring out what you want. Like one of the most difficult challenges for a learner today is the amount of information which is available. So
Exactly.
the thing which people need to focus on is to find out what works for them. Somebody might be
Exactly.
good at reading. Somebody might, like, I have books because I like reading books. I mean, I create courses, but the way I learn is by books. So that's what I like. Like whenever I would want to learn, let's say Kubernetes, I'll order 5, 10 books on Kubernetes, right? So that's how I love learning. But somebody might like listening from the founder of Kubernetes. Somebody might like a specific author, right? So try and figure out what works for you, right? The first thing that you need to figure out, because especially, I mean, we are in an industry where learning is continuous. It's not one time activity. And that's where you need to figure out what works for you, whether books work for you, whether videos work for you, whether courses work for you. You need to work out what works for you, and like that should be customized to your own thing, right? Now, having said that, as far as cloud, like as far as DevOps is concerned, I think probably containers, Docker might be a good thing for people to start with, right? So start with Docker, and probably once you know Docker, probably you can go into Kubernetes and Terraform. If you want me to pick up 3 tools, I would say Docker, Kubernetes, and Terraform. One recommendation is, if you'd want to learn Kubernetes and Terraform, I would think it's better to go to the cloud. Like learn one of the
Yes.
cloud platforms, AWS, Azure, and Google Cloud. A lot of people actually think cloud is difficult, right? Cloud is just another computer. Like we have, right? It's just like instead of deploying it to my computer, I'm deploying it to somebody else's computer somewhere. There are security and things like that which come into picture, but
Yes.
that's what
Yes.
cloud is, right? It's not complex. If you are good at programming, if you understand C or C++ or Java or Python, if you are good at any of these programming languages, cloud and DevOps are easier part. Those things you can
Exactly.
learn at any particular point in time. Things like algorithms, data structures, those are complex things. If you're able to learn them, cloud and DevOps are like nothing. Like you can easily learn them, right? So that's the
Exactly.
attitude you need to take. And if you want to learn DevOps, probably you'd want to start with the cloud first.
Yes. So this is the very base and a prerequisite which you have given, right? So to start, even many of the people ask me also that how to uh, start or how to learn. Even when I say someone, nah, just go read the documentation. The biggest question the person who is standing opposite to me will ask, uh, do I need to read the whole documentation? Do I need to
Yeah,
read line by line? The only and the simplest answer is no. Just learn that much or just observe that much which is fulfilling your use case. Obviously, if I just want to check how to use volumes in Kubernetes, so why should I see what is the meaning of config map, right? So this is the thing.
absolutely.
If I need to
Yeah,
check what is the meaning of config map, how to deploy, obviously I won't check what is the meaning of secrets in Kubernetes, right? So documentation thing is just the whole thing which is available, which is in a very easy language. But you need to check what actually you're fulfilling your use case. Nobody knows the
yeah,
whole technology, right? So this is the only thing, and obviously this is endless,
yeah.
and
And also,
updates are
like,
coming daily.
yeah, most of the
Yeah.
tools, if you look at their starting, right? So Docker, if you go to the Docker website, they have a
Ah.
starting guide which focuses on the most important aspects. I'm a great
Mhm.
believer in the 80-20 rule, right? A lot of times, if you look at any tool, let's say there are 100 things to learn, pick up the 20 things which are used 80% of the time. That's
Yeah.
what you need to focus on, on your learning. On your learning, whenever I create a course, for example, right, our goal is not to cover all the 100 aspects of a tool. It's
Definitely.
about covering the 20 aspects which are used 80% of the time, and enabling the learners so that they can learn the remaining things on their own. Right?
Exactly.
That's the goal. It's not about trying to cover everything, right? If I try to cover everything, then I'll be only creating courses 24 hours a day, right? And that does not add any value, because if I'm just learning something without using it, I'll forget it anyway, right?
Definitely.
So it's very, very important to identify the, like, even when you are, like, the 80-20 rule is very, very important, not just for me when I'm creating a course, but also as a learner. And as a learner, you have to pick up and learn the 20% of things which are most important things. And that's where you need guidance. And that's where you need to talk to people who have done that before, or try and follow a course creator or a video creator who you believe in, right? That's the most important thing. You need to have either somebody to guide you. For example, if I'm learning Docker, right, you need to first figure out, okay, what are the 20% things that I would want to learn about Docker? If I'm
Definitely.
learning DevOps, what are the 20% of the tools that I would want to learn? Right? So you need some guidance. You need to talk to people. You need to talk to your seniors. You need to talk to people who are in job right now. Right? There is no shortcut to that. A lot of people directly jump into technology without trying to figure out or talk with somebody with respect to their situation. The current knowledge is very, very important, and where you want to go to, and having discussion with your seniors, with people, or like following videos and trying to figure out what are the 20% of things that you would want to learn, right? So that's another aspect which is really, really important. The reason why, I mean, I don't want to prescribe anything, because the prescription would vary. And if anybody is going to start, probably the three most popular DevOps tools today would be Docker, Kubernetes, and Terraform. So that's
Exactly.
kind of the generic answer.
Exactly. So this is covering everything now. We are just covering the containers. We are just covering the configuration. We are just configuring the infra.
Right.
The other things which you need to provision by yourself. Obviously, if you need to configure something, the templates are ready via Docker, and the cluster is ready via Kubernetes. The infra is ready via Terraform. If you need to deploy something, configure something, go for Ansible. Right.
Absolutely.
So this is the
Absolutely.
thing which the person need to understand. And as you said, before directly jumping towards the technology, you need to understand the basics first. Let's say, obviously, if you don't know how the networking thing is working, if you don't know how the OSI model is working, so how will you figure out how will you troubleshoot the things, right? Obviously, basic things are required. If you don't know Linux, how you will do Docker, right? So this is a thing
Absolutely.
which comes under any student's mind who is starting with DevOps. So this lands us to another direct question: what is the core prerequisites? Exact
Right.
core prerequisites.
For me, like, most important thing, and the most, like, if you are looking at, like, I hope a lot of guys who are watching this are programming, right? Because that is for me a good prerequisite, either programming or scripting, right? If like that's the prerequisite. All the others you can learn, right? If you're learning programming or learning scripting, getting started with that is very, very difficult. It takes time.
Definitely.
A lot of people give up programming or scripting because they find it's too difficult. Because that's right. Because it's like the first time you are playing with a computer, and that's when it's the most toughest. But you'd see that once you clear that stage, once you know programming, once you know scripting, you'd see that rest of the things are much more easier. Like for me,
Definitely.
like Docker, Kubernetes, Terraform, these are much easier to learn than programming and scripting. For me, those are the prerequisites. The only prerequisites are those. You might want to focus a little bit on understanding Linux, like understanding some of the like fundamental Linux commands, right? I'm not talking about mastering Linux. I'm just talking about the top 20 Linux commands which are frequently used. You don't really need to worry about mastering everything. Having a
Mm-hmm.
high level overview of Linux should be more than sufficient.
Yes, definitely. Obviously, mm, you don't need to understand how partitioning works in the Linux to start with DevOps, right? But yeah,
No,
know
you don't need
that
to.
you need to
Again,
train.
it's about,
Exactly.
actually, like for me, it's all about T-shaped skills, right? So whenever we talk about things in the industry today, it's T-shaped skills. Uh, Today, there is so much expectation from learners to learn a wide variety of things, and the moment there are so many things to learn, you cannot expect anybody to be expert at all of them, right? It's
Definitely.
very, very important that you are specialized in one area and you have broad knowledge in all the areas. And
Definitely.
you'd see that Linux and things like that, as you go and play with other things, as you keep learning DevOps, your Linux knowledge will automatically improve. You don't really need
Exactly.
to be a master of Linux at the start. As you go on further, you play with Docker, you face a few problems, you try and figure them out, your knowledge of Linux will automatically improve. So over a period of time, you would see that it will gradually improve. So you need to pick up whether I would want to be an expert at, like, let's say, Docker, Kubernetes. If those are the two areas you want to be an expert on, focus on them. Have good knowledge of, I mean, programming is something which is very, very important, or scripting is very,
Definitely.
very important. So you should be really good at that. And Linux, good knowledge. You don't need to be a master. Having sufficient knowledge is more than sufficient. And then you can
Definitely.
jump into any of the Docker, Kubernetes, Azure DevOps, or Terraform. Any of them should be a good starting point.
Definitely. You given the good, clearer answer, clearer vision to the students who are watching this, that uh, understanding everything is not required, right? Obviously, you don't need to understand whole Kubernetes just to deploy a pod, right? So
Absolutely.
obviously,
Absolutely.
the things are direct and very clear. Learn that much what is fulfilling your respective use case, right? So, and the very, as you said, that the programming is required. So I also even support this statement, right? That if you do the programming, obviously it opens up your mind. It opens up
Absolutely.
your thinking power, right? So how you can deploy something. Let's say if I ask somebody to deploy 100 VPC in AWS account or a GCP account, obviously you won't go again and again and deploy one VPC and three subnets in that. Obviously, what you will to use Terraform, and for that you need to use a for loop, right? You can just deploy one loop, and that respective script will be executed, and 100, even thousands of VPCs will be created. So obviously, programming language is, or any programming knowledge is required everywhere. Even
Absolutely.
sometimes Ansible and even these configuration of Docker and Kubernetes can be very, very tedious, right? So if in let's say if you're talking about a big infra or a big setup, these things can be very, very tedious sometimes. But if you have the knowledge of the basics, that means you can easily troubleshoot the things, right? So if you
Absolutely.
know the base, you can directly touch the heights, right? So this is the thing which any student need to cover up. So this is
Absolutely.
landing us towards another question. Let's say if any person learned such technologies at a greater extent, and the person or the student created the custom projects, like the students has created some pipelines, or let's say who was achieving some goals via CI/CD or GitHub integrated Docker, strengthening for their use Red Hat Enterprise Linux, anything. So they have created some of the custom projects. But let's say they want to get hired at a good companies who are hiring. So can you please tell us some of the major companies that hire for direct DevOps roles, right? So that will be helpful for the students who are watching this, or the persons who want to switch to DevOps in a top tech guns, right?
If you're talking about any of the top companies, right? So all the FANG companies, all the product companies, all the IT companies, like services companies, every company out there is looking for DevOps engineers. There is no company, because as I said earlier, DevOps is how you build software.
Yeah,
All these companies are building software. Like today, almost every company is a software company, right? So even companies which are, like, for example, sell, like Amazon sells, actually Amazon has nothing to do with software. Right, today they are a software company, right? So Flipkart, for example, they have, I mean, they sell something. They are not a software company at all, to be really, really frank. But their core product today is software again. So, and the way they build software, like almost every enterprise out there is using DevOps in one form or the other. The maturity is different, right? Some companies might be at the starting stage of DevOps maturity, and some companies might be really, really good at doing DevOps, right? So the maturity might be different, but almost every company out there is hiring DevOps engineers. And like, it's very, very important. That's why it's very important to understand, like a lot of people actually, let's say somebody is aiming for Amazon. The first thing that I would recommend you to do is to go to, like, Amazon. Try, I mean, go and figure out what Amazon is making use of, what are the DevOps tools that Amazon is making use of, and try to learn them, right? So it's very important to understand what the job profile you are applying to is, and based on that, customize your learning.
Definitely. So this is the good answer which you have given. Even I just want to shadow one some a bit of light on this answer. Like as you said that everyone is using DevOps. In the end, everyone is using DevOps. Let's say if you talk about the Flipkart, the website of Flipkart is, I don't believe you have seen some any kind of downtime in the Flipkart website, right? They never do that. Obviously, the operation thing, the clusters which are running in the back end, and how they are scaling up the things in a fantabulous pattern. So this everything is DevOps, right? The cycle is just
Absolutely.
the things. Let's say the containers are expanding or shrinking, something. But the operations, the monitoring, everything under the hood is handled by this concept or this methodology only. Even development is the first part, and operations is the other part, which combines to makes one word or one methodology or a mindset that is DevOps, right?
Absolutely.
So let's say if some person learned some technologies, and let's say the person placed in a company, so what is the current role? So how the day which will pass in the DevOps engineer's life, they need to start the containers, stop the containers, create the pipelines, or what? So another question lands at this point: what does a DevOps engineer do in day-to-day work?
Again, because we are talking about such a big stretch of things, right? So we are talking about DevOps includes dev plus ops. If and also a lot of times dev and ops are not like separate circles, it's like intersecting circles, and a lot of people actually are in the intersection and doing both dev and ops.
Yep.
So the typical day, for example, if somebody is doing dev and ops, both of them, right, you might be writing some code, there might be some continuous you might be writing some code, you commit it to a GitHub or Git repository or any source control that you have, and as soon as you commit it in, maybe there might be some continuous integration tool which you are making use of. It would automatically detect the change, it would see that I have committed some piece of code. So what it starts doing is it would build probably a container image and it would push it to a container repository, right? So your job might be, if there is a problem like with let's say the creating a container image, you might want to fix that, right? Or
Yep.
uh, as soon as your container image is created, maybe your CD cycle kicks in, right? So your
Exactly.
during CD you would actually deploy it maybe to a test environment, and maybe like so on and so forth, right? So I mean, it's very very difficult to define uh, what a specific DevOps engineer does in a specific day, because there are so many roles and there might be so many different things that you would do as part of the day. So as I said, it's like from specialization, like earlier if you look at the industry, it was specialized. You write code, you are responsible for continuous
Yes.
integration, you are responsible for deployment, you are responsible for
Yes.
operations. It
Yes.
was
Yes.
easy to define what you do in a day, but now you might be doing any of these 100 things in a day, and it's very very difficult to define that. And actually that's what makes it very very interesting as well, right? It's like you learn a lot, right? If you are in really really good teams, the scope and like the way I see it is like this, right? Earlier, if I go 15 years back, 20 years back, when I started my career, I was doing programming, and there was no way I can differentiate myself from somebody who's sitting right beside me,
Hmm.
right? Because each of us are doing very very similar things. But today, because we have the capability to do a lot, right, there are a lot of things that we can get involved to. The way we can differentiate, the opportunities to differentiate ourselves is also high. So a
Definitely.
lot of people actually look at it like a negative. I have to learn 100 things, I have to learn 100 things. The thing you need to think
Mhm.
about is every one of us who are competing with us for the jobs also need to learn the same thing, right? It's
Definitely.
not like, I mean, it's like people don't come out of magic and learn everything, right? That's
Exactly.
not what happens. Everybody who's studying right now are in the same shoes, like are just like you. And whoever is able to learn faster, able to identify what are the most important things to learn and learn faster, that's what will differentiate you. And today, the biggest thing is industry also has learned to differentiate. Earlier, like the differences in salary between, let's say, okay, good, and very good and excellent guys was not huge, maybe 2x. Like when I started off, the differences in packages would be maximum 2x at the starting level. But now the differences in packages are maybe 5x, 10x sometimes, right? The
Mhm.
more you know, the bigger package you would get. And that's why it's very very important to understand what are the things which are trending in the market, trying to like identify that and learn them, and that also helps you to differentiate and get yourselves jobs. Even things like IT services companies don't have one package today. Even for beginners,
Definitely.
they have 2 or 3 different packages, and
Definitely.
based on your knowledge you'd get the appropriate package.
Definitely. Definitely. So this is the very clearer answer which you have given. I think this will answer most of the questions which are connected to this question even, right? So to the students or whoever is watching this, right? So even just knowing a single technology, or just let's say even just knowing Ansible, or even just knowing Terraform, right? So this thing will be categorized in different things, and that's how you just don't need to deploy containers in day by day, right? So that depends upon what expertise you have or something, right? So good answer which you have given, and this clarifies even uh, the questions which are connected to this question even. So many people ask that if I just know Jenkins, and if I got the job as a DevOps engineer, so do I need to do the my task only on Jenkins? So the clearer answer is no. No, man. You just don't need to deploy or build a CI/CD pipeline or write the Jenkins file, right? So maybe your company or organization asks you to launch a Docker container manually. So maybe this is the thing which they can ask you. So right. So I think we can directly move towards another question. Let's say, uh, as we have mentioned, or as we have discussed, many domains are available. Server templating is available, or IaaS is available. Different things are available. So
Absolutely.
can you just give a brief of light on this? So what are the different subdomains? And just
Right.
a small briefing will be helpful.
Absolutely. So one of the things which we talked about earlier is feedback is very, very important part of DevOps. You want to get quick feedback through automation, right?
Mhm.
So let's look at some of the important parts which enable that, right? So continuous integration, continuous deployment. For example, I'm writing some piece of code. Uh,
Mhm.
like the first thing I would want to make sure is when somebody commits code to the GitHub repository, is the code compiling? Is the code syntactically right? Are all the unit tests written well? Are all the coding standards working or not? I mean, are all the coding standards met or not? Right? So unit tests are running or not? Do am I able to build a proper package for the application? So you'd want to be able to get quick feedback on this. That's why we set up a continuous integration life cycle, where as soon as somebody developer commits code in, what we would do is we would do a continuous integration build. We check
Mhm.
everything, and we
Definitely.
see, okay, is the code compiling? Are there any unit test failures? If there are any problems, you get an email saying, hey developer, you caused a build failure, right? That's
Definitely.
continuous integration. The One of the like important goals of continuous integration is to build a final deployable unit. Whatever thing you would want to finally deploy to your production server is what you would want to build in your continuous integration. The next thing is continuous deployment or continuous delivery, right? Continuous deployment, like these terms can be confusing.
Mhm.
Like for beginner, they can think of it as if these are both the same. These are the way you can deploy your package to an environment. Whatever
That's
package you have created, a jar
yeah.
file or a war file or a Docker image, you'd want to deploy it to an environment, whether it's test environment, QA environment, staging
Mhm.
environment, production environment. That's what is called continuous deployment.
Definitely.
Now, even before you would want to deploy a software, the environment has to be there, right? You can manually create the server, you can manually install software, you can manually configure it, uh, you can do all that. The other option is to automate everything, right? That is
Yeah.
what we call as infrastructure as code, right?
Exactly.
As part of infrastructure as code, what you can do is you can write a script which says, I want 100 servers to be created. Run the script, it will create 100 servers with all the software that you would need, right? That is what is called infrastructure as code. Typically, Terraform, Ansible, like Pulumi, lot of cloud-specific tools play in this
Yeah.
particular field, right? So the last part is observability. Basically, like people also call this monitoring, operations, a lot of things. Finally,
Mhm.
like today, the standard term which is used in the industry for that is observability. You'd want
Exactly.
to be able to look at the logs and debug problems. You'd want to be able to see if there are like today, let's say I'm using microservices architecture. I would want to be able to trace the request. Tracing is very, very important. You'd want to be able to monitor, like you'd want to be able to look at different business related metrics and technology related metrics, right?
Yeah.
Server related, DCP utilizations, database utilization, a lot of other metrics. So that's the last part, where you are focusing on the like observability. You are getting a sufficient metrics from your production environment, so that if users are facing any problem, you'd want to detect that and you'd want to be able to quickly react to it, right? So that's the last part. So for me, these are the important parts: CI, CD, IAC, and the last part is observability. Now, we also
Yeah.
talk about containers and container orchestration as part of DevOps because
Mhm.
containers and container orchestration help you to standardize things, right? Earlier, like if you have a Java application, if you have a Python application, if you have a Node application, the way you deploy them was very, very different. I like the operations team had a document which said, okay, if it's a Java application, follow these instructions. If it's a Python application, and then they make mistakes, right? You cannot have the same hardware to run all these as well. You have to create different hardware for different kind
Definitely.
of things. And that's
Definitely.
where containers came in, right? With container, it does not matter what is inside the container. It is a Java
Mhm.
application, a Python application, a Node.js application. It does not matter. So it standardizes the entire process, your development process, CI, CD, IAC, your monitoring process. Everything becomes a standard because everything is a container now. It does not
Definitely.
matter what's in the container, it's a container. And now you have thousands of such containers to manage for thousands of applications. You don't want to manually do that. That's where you go for container orchestration like Kubernetes, right? At a high level, these are the important subdomains for me.
Yes. So yeah. So this is the good example which you have given, and how the things are actually working in the real world, right? So as we have talked about many endless type of tools available. So if someone needs to practice, right? They have learned the concept. Let's say a person knows how to do a port mapping in the Docker, right? Let's say if the person knows how to use the volumes in the Docker, if a person knows, let's say Docker Compose, Docker Swarm, or the concepts in the Kubernetes like config maps, secrets, and let's say if a person in Ansible knows how to use a variable or handlers or some kind of concepts, but they need to do some kind of implementation, right? So what are the projects? So how to create the projects, how to proceed with the projects or something like that. So can you please give answer of this question? What projects can a person create, a custom projects to learn DevOps, that to implement the things by their own? So that will be helpful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Sure. I think like today, a cloud provides you with a lot of free tier options, right? AWS provides you with a free tier,
Yeah.
GCP, Azure provides you with a free tier account, right? So one of the like pick up any application that you are developing. It might be a Java application, it might be a Python, Node, whichever application you are working on right now. Try and
Mhm.
create a container for it and try and deploy it on one of the cloud platforms. Just go to the
Yeah.
cloud platform. Each of the cloud platforms have a like managed service which can deploy a container, right? That's the first exercise I would recommend everybody to try. Build a container and deploy it to the cloud. The second step is go and use a container orchestration solution on the cloud, right? Like just like you are talking about, uh, there are like each of the cloud providers have a managed Kubernetes service. Google Cloud has GKE, Azure has Azure has AKS, and
Yes.
AWS has EKS, right?
Yes.
Just go and create a Kubernetes cluster, see what's involved, and try and deploy an application there, right? Like today, I think with the emergence of cloud, learning DevOps has become easier. So I would say the first project you can try on is to build a container. The second one is to deploy the container to the cloud. The third one is to create a cluster, a Kubernetes cluster in the cloud. And the fourth one is to deploy whatever you have container you have created to Kubernetes cluster. That might be a really, really good starting point. If you want to learn Terraform, you can also try and create like a virtual machine instance using Terraform. Right? Whether if you are playing with Azure, it might be a virtual machine. If you are playing with Google Cloud, it might be a compute engine. If you're playing with uh, AWS, it might be an EC2. Just create a specific virtual machine, and then you can actually try and see what you can do with Terraform. So those would be some of the projects that you can start with, right? I mean, these days, actually having a good GitHub profile is very, very important. So,
Mhm.
like whenever you learn anything, try and create a GitHub profile, put it out there so that you can like demonstrate that these are the projects you have worked on.
Yes, yes, yes. So this is a, I mean, good example which you have given to how to create the custom projects and how to implement them. So uh, just take this question a bit forward. So let's say how much time it will take to learn something. I
Yeah.
don't want to learn the whole Docker. I don't want to learn the whole Kubernetes. So average time to learn, let's say I just want to learn three major technologies or three major parts. So on an average, how much time it will take to learn the things, the required
See,
skills which are hot in the market?
I think uh, there are two parts to learning, right? A lot of people actually confuse between these two parts.
Mhm.
Part one is choosing what to learn. Part two is learning. Like I call this the decision phase and the learning phase. A lot of people actually spend a lot of time alternating between these two phases. And that's where they lose a lot of time. For me, the decision phase is where you talk to people, figure out what you want to learn, what you would want to learn. Let's say you want to learn Docker. That's also the phase where you decide how do you want to learn Docker. I want to follow a course. I want to complete this video. I want to read this documentation completely. Right? That's the decision phase. So the important part is at the end of the decision phase, there should be an outcome which says, okay, I'm going to do this. Once you have that decision, it's easy. Like you can probably Docker, for example, right? If you're good at programming, learning Docker might not be more than 2 weeks, right? It's there's not a lot of complexity associated with Docker. Like you can go and search for Docker in 28 minutes. There's a video of about 60 minutes, and it covers about the, like I would say 10% of the like most important concepts of Docker are covered just in that specific video, right? So like even if you look at our Docker course, at a max it's like 4 or 5 hours, right? So these are not large, I mean there are not hundreds of things to learn about Docker is all about how do you containerize something, how do you optimize your container, how do you make it secure, and then how do you run it, right? It's and understanding a little bit about the Docker runtime, the concepts of Docker, right? So it's not a lot. Like Kubernetes might be a tough thing to learn, because Kubernetes, especially like with respect to Kubernetes, managing the cluster of Kubernetes and deploying applications, right? If I separate them out, so if I would want to understand how to create a Kubernetes cluster, that would take a few months. But if I'm focusing on how to deploy applications to
Deployment.
Kubernetes,
Right.
that might be a easier thing to learn. So it's important to figure out. So if you are like, if you find a good course, if you find good material which you like and which you are able to follow, I don't think any of the tools would take more than 1 to 2 weeks to learn. So Terraform 1 to 2 weeks. Kubernetes is one which will take long, maybe 3 to 4 weeks, right? CI/CD, for example, right? A lot of these clouds today make CI/CD very very easy. So things like CI/CD you can learn in 1 to 2 weeks, not more than that. Things like observability. Once you know Docker Kubernetes, you'll be able to easily learn observability using the standardization around the containers. So yeah, it's about trying to figure out, like I think the toughest part is figuring out where to learn, what to learn, where to learn. The learning part is the shorter part.
Exactly. So this is the, you said the statements very correctly. Then what are the answers which you have given was it clarifies many things for the students who are hearing this or watching this, right? So this lends towards the next question with us. Let's say what are the top three skills which we need to learn, just top three, so that we can just
Absolutely.
start with these three skills and we can jump off to another skills by our own, but the very first prior skills which we need to learn to become
Yeah, I
a.
would say number one is programming.
Mhm.
Having either programming, if you are not really a programmer, at least some kind of scripting, right? So
Mhm.
if you're a good programmer, that's a big bonus, right? If you are not a good programmer, at least some kind of scripting with Python or something of that kind should be a good starting point. The
Mhm.
second important skill I would recommend you to focus on is containers, right? Understanding containers is very 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 important, because almost every organization out there is going container first, right? Even like AWS, for example, right?
Right.
They hate Kubernetes, but today there's a managed service for Kubernetes even in AWS, right?
Yes.
It's
Yes.
like it's become such a big standard. Like so,
Mhm.
containers and container orchestration, right? That's the second thing. The third thing I would recommend you to do is to experiment and find out what works for you to be a good learner, right? There are so many platforms out there. What I would recommend you to do is, as a learner, try and spend 1 hour a day on different platforms and try and figure out where you are learning fast, right? The only way you can do that is by experimenting, right? The reason why I'm putting it in these three is because we are in an industry which is changing, and the most important differentiator between people here is how fast you can learn. And you will be able to learn fast when you are making the best use of the resources that are available out there. Internet is vast. There are so many websites, there are so many YouTube channels, there are so many courses, there are so many platforms where you can learn. So try and figure out what is the best place that works for you, right? That's the
Definitely.
important thing that everybody has to figure out, what works for you, right? Today I have 50 courses and I cannot create 50 courses like if I'm not able to learn fast, right?
Definitely.
So the I figured out what works for me, and the same way it's important for you to figure out what works for you. The A lot of people are under the assumption that okay, my senior did this, it worked for him, it will work for me. No,
Definitely.
that's not the right thing. It's a good starting point, right? Whatever experience your senior had, whatever experience others had, is a good starting point. You start there, but it does not have to be the ending point. You need to experiment and find out what works for you, because learning is something which is continuous, and figuring out what works for you, what is the most efficient way uh, to learn. Because if you look at a lot of things in this world, right, money, lot of them uh, are probably you can get it, you can lose it, but the only
Definitely.
thing you keep losing everything every time is time, right? Once you lose time, you will not get it back. So making the
Definitely.
best use of your learning time, like if you are learning for 60 minutes, what gives you the best returns in those 60 minutes? That's what I would recommend you everybody to focus on.
Definitely, definitely. So you're given the good answer. Let's say don't learn the things which are not fulfilling the use case. Learn those which are fulfilling your use case. Obviously, if you just need to execute or you just need to use a Docker, why would you go for help, right? So this is the thing. If that only Docker is fulfilling your use case as of now, so I don't think so. Just jumping towards another technologies to make the things complex, obviously it will just pull up your legs down, right?
Absolutely,
So, and
absolutely.
the second part for the focus which you are given, right? So just if you're just doing something, just need to be concentrated 100%. If you're giving 60 minutes, just give the whole 60 minutes, right? So this is a thing which clarifies most of the questions of for the students, and how the DevOps is working, why DevOps is important, which tools are important, and
Actually,
how
just
much
one thing I
time.
would add, actually,
Please,
just the fourth
please.
thing I would say is cloud, right? So I said programming, I said continuous container orchestration, third,
Definitely.
figuring out what to learn. I don't want to leave off the cloud because cloud is also very, very important. I think Nikhil Kumar is saying cloud too is important. I agree with him. He's saying, so I absolutely agree. I think today, cloud is also very, very important, because in 5 years, almost every enterprise out there would be
Will use cloud.
running almost 90% of their workloads on the cloud, right? So
Obviously,
cloud is
obviously.
also very, very important for you to learn. So
Exactly. Because of
uh,
data. Yeah.
like exactly. So like cloud again is not difficult, right? What I would recommend, a lot of people in college who are just starting their college career, maybe first year, second year, third year, what I would recommend you to do is to get one of the starting cloud certifications, either AZ 900 or cloud practitioner, or even something like Google Cloud Digital Leader, right? I mean, it's not to get a lot of technical knowledge, but at least to understand what a cloud is, like just to
Yeah.
figure out, just to get your foot in the door, just to convince yourself that cloud is easy. Just go there,
Yes.
do one of these certifications. I think that might also be a great thing for you to pursue. A lot of these
Obvi-
certifications you can actually do that in 3 to 4 weeks max.
Definitely, definitely. Because data is increasing second by second. And obviously, the on premises servers don't have that capacity to
Absolutely.
just set up the data at their end. Obviously, you need to migrate your data towards the cloud, who are handling your data and giving the guarantee of the availability, and many, many other factors available at the very affordable prices, right? Obviously, pay as you go thing, which is a good
Absolutely.
thing available. So I
Absolutely,
believe
absolutely.
most of the
I mean,
questions are.
imagine a startup, right? Like, for example, if I'm starting a company today, I can today now within 5 minutes I can go to AWS and spin up a server in Australia. I can spin up a server in US. I can spin up a
Definitely.
server in Europe, anywhere, right? I mean,
Definitely.
imagine the power. Like that
Exactly.
power we never had.
Never, never, ever. So this is the good power and good easiness. Just a button of clicks, your cluster is will get spun up. Just a minute of couple of clicks, your database will be available. Couple of clicks, your instance will be available. Whatever you ask for will be available in couple of clicks. So
Absolutely,
that's what the
absolutely,
power of cloud and the power of DevOps, which is just
absolutely,
growing exponentially in the market, right? And this will
absolutely.
obviously hold a good value in the market. And if you have those skills, those relevant certifications, obviously you will stand out from the crowd, right?
Exactly.
Exactly. So this is the good thing, and I hope students will get answers of many questions which they are looking for. And even you have explained really well to the students, and whoever watching this video right now, I think your queries are being answered. Let's check if the chat box if something is available. Let's go. It won't take too much long. So let's say as a fresher, how to get a job in DevOps, just a fresher.
Right. So as a fresher, I think learn programming, learn containers, learn container orchestration, and learn a cloud. I think
Mm-hmm.
those should be sufficient for you to get started. Be good programming. Like the number one thing is programming, right? Focus on that, be good at it. And then probably you can learn containers, container orchestration, and get a cloud certification.
This is good. So obviously cloud certification will help you out to stand out. Let's say if the certifications are just a validity that you know this skill. Obviously if someone has the let's GCP ACE certification, associate cloud engineer, obviously that person knows the basics of GCP, right? So this will just
Absolutely.
validate your skills, that you know the GCP, you know the services like App Engine, GKE, or other services which are used, Cloud SQL, BigQuery, something. So obviously this will
Absolutely.
validate your skills, and it will help you to stand out from the crowd who are just applying for that respective job, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah. As
uh,
such, I mean, I remember this quote from Sunil Gavaskar. There was a there was a young cricketer who asked him,
mhm,
okay, I'm scoring a lot of runs, but I'm not getting peaked. Sunil Gavaskar told him, you are scoring 60s, 70s. If you want selectors to pick you, score 200, 300. Right? I mean, it's if you are doing the same thing as somebody who's beside you, you might or might not get selected. But if you
definitely.
do something special, if you learn, and if you are ahead of the pack, if you are in the top 5% of people, then that's the best place to be in. And especially because today industry is not only picking you up but also differentiating you in terms of the salary as well.
Definitely, definitely. So good answer which you have given, and this clarifies the things. And the answers, whatever answers which you have given, are completely nail on the head. And this will surely help the students to clarify their vision, how they are watching the DevOps, or what they want to become, which technology they need to learn, how to approach, how to start, which cloud certifications, whatever things which are you have explained a fantabulous thing. And I think that will answer most of the questions of the students. And I think the questions in the chat box are quite similar, right? How to start, where to start, and I think you have given all the answers. So yeah, so it is a great pleasure to speak with you today, and Ranga. So thank you so much for coming with us and answering the questions, and what is the core meaning and how to start and where to start off. These the questions will come back, right? So thank you so much for joining with us, and I believe this will give the clearer vision to the students, and this will give the roadmap to the students how to start, right? And if they're just getting confused and they're stuck in between, this will obviously help everyone, not just the students and the person who are wishing to switch their career in DevOps. Obviously this will help them out too, right? So thank you so much, Ranga, joining with us today, and have a great time. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot,
Thank
Ashutosh. Thanks for being a
you,
great host.
thank you so much, my dear
Yeah.
audience. So bye bye, take care.
Thanks a lot everybody who was listening to it. Thank you.